Well, greetings to all and welcome to our exchange today regarding eProject Express. We're just delighted to have a guest join us today. Liz, I'll just ask you to start us off here with a few administrative details and then perhaps introduce our guests.
Sure, thanks, Dale. I'll introduce myself first. Elizabeth Stewart, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and joined by Dale Hawes of Energy Services Coalition. We are your hosts, and we're really delighted to welcome James Giroux, aka Jay Giroux, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities Management at UMass Dartmouth. And he's got a long, storied career in facilities management, in energy savings performance contracting, which is our focus today for universities and colleges. He's also worked as directors of facilities and operation at Rhode Island College, and also he worked for the state of Rhode Island. So he's got a long career in this area. Before we get going, I would like to just say, if you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A section of Zoom. We will do our best to get to them during the webinar. We have a hard stop at the end of the hour. So if we don't get to all your questions, we'll follow up with you later. And also, I believe, Dale, we will email the presentation. We'll let you know when the recording link is up. So we're recording this webinar. It's not like a ton of slides or anything, but we're going to have an interview with Jay, and then we'll also have a short demonstration of eProject Express. So,
right. And because a couple of the slides have hyperlinks in them, we're glad to send those along as well.
Great. All right. Take it away, Dale. And welcome, Jay. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just introduce myself very briefly. For those of you that don't know, I've come to say it pretty simply. I guess in the last several decades now, I've worked in, with, or for 44 of the 50 states in the United States. So, you know, it's some familiarity in performance contracting for you. And we're just delighted to be able to have Jay join us. I'm going to manage this software and turn me off here from a video standpoint so that we can focus on Jay. Having an interview with someone who has this considerable experience in application and use of performance contracting, frankly, is a real honor. And it's our hope that you'll be able to glean some key information from our interview and then the short presentation that follows. You know, as we prepared for our time together today, Jay, you shared with me that you've been a project participant in a number of ESPC projects in a few different locations, but take us back, if you would. Take us all the way back to the first time you considered using performance contracting. Surely, like others that we hear so often, you heard some horror story about a project that 10, 15, 20 years ago that just didn't go right.
Well, I'm actually going to start with that project because I was a consultant for a university, and every month they'd have a 168-page bill from an energy performance contract. The energy performance contract at the time was a save percentage contract, so they split the savings 50-50. But it was 168 pages, and it was 2 times more than the university had ever used in power. So that's kind of where I started, was trying to help the university go through the bill and figure out what 168 pages of billing was. You know, I don't think that I do not think it was a successful contract. Post that, I was a consultant. I went to work for the state of Rhode Island. The Office of Energy Resource wanted to get involved in energy performance contracting, and one of my thoughts were, you know, don't make it on a shared savings, make it on a performance with a guaranteed savings. Shared savings you're fighting over. Guaranteed savings, you have a third party come in and verify the savings. So when I started with the state of Rhode Island, it was just around the time that I think Mr. Obama became president, and we thought we were going to have all this money. And actually, it might have been a little earlier than that. It was right around 2000, and we decided 2002. So we decided that we needed a vehicle to do energy performance contracting with a guaranteed savings. We formatted it around a federal program. We wrote a contract, and it was actually for a group of hospitals for the state of Rhode Island. It was called MHRH. It was mental health retardation in hospitals. You can't say that word anymore. Anyways, we broke it into two pieces. We had the first piece was somewhere around $35–40 million. The second piece was somewhere around 10. And what we did was we set it up as a RFP. We started off with a request for qualifications. Around those qualifications, we picked 4 companies. The 4 companies we went out to RFP, and the RFP was wide open. So the RFP basically was come in with the ideas of an not the investment grade audit, but the idea of an investment grade audit of what you guys are going to do for us. So the first project was a project at the Pastore Center, which is a 300-acre, I don't know, probably had a $25 million fuel bill at one time. Infrastructure, total disaster. Power plant's brand new. Good buildings. I mean, good absorbers. You know, once you get into the building, it was okay. But it looked like a horror movie when you drove around from the steam leaks and the infrastructure issues. So anyways, we went to the 4 companies. 4 companies sent us their proposals of how they were going to make the campus better and more efficient. And we did it over 15 years. So as we got these proposals, you know, I think one of the energy performance contractors, you know, was the condensate pump. The condensate piping is not reliable. It's you know, Swiss cheese. Just dump your condensate. Just we're going to put steam out and dump your condensate. We went from that to somebody who wanted to replace all the steam piping, all the condensate piping, install RO water for makeup water, and again, there was multiple, you know, go into the hospital, do VAV, go into the laundry and put ozone. I mean, it was comprehensive of the entire facility. One of the issues that we really had also was convincing state purchasing that and again, I think the maximum cost they came in was somewhere around, let's say, $54 million. Well, the high bid was $54 million with the most value, most savings. The low bid was like $22 million that didn't even pay for itself within the 15 years. Our first fight was with state purchasing to say, hey, look, we don't want to pick the low bid, him egging his truck. We want to pick the high bid that's got the most value. Once we were able to actually show the cash flow and that the cash flow was positive, we had purchasing on board. We were able to get legal on board. And we were able to pick the company that had the most value. The second hospital, part of what we wanted to do was biomass. We wanted to reduce the carbon footprint there. And one of the companies actually had proposed a biomass. Now, this particular hospital was out in the sticks. It had no natural gas. And at one point, they did not even have electricity. They produced all their own electricity. And they were burning heavy fuel oil. So we put in a biomass. We actually removed all the window air conditioners. We put in a biomass, made 100-pound steam, removed all the radiators, put in fan coil units, and then we put in a steam absorber. So we're heating and air conditioning that hospital burning wood chips. That's probably one of the coolest projects that I worked on, but that's kind of how we, I mean, we sat down, we wrote a contract, we wrote the contract site specific for what we were trying to do and what we wanted to accomplish with saving, guaranteed savings, and not something that somebody can't back up as the contract. The other piece in the contract was that we put a third party in there for measurement and verification. So it wasn't what I was saying should be the project. So what I was saying the savings were, we had a third party come in and validate what the investment grade audit, you know, what it presented, along with concurrence of what projects we picked out of the investment grade audit and concurrence of the measurement and verification.
Jay, who was that third party that you got? Was it an owner's rep or?
No, it was another engineering firm that strictly did M&V.
Got it.
So
Got it.
there's a couple of things that you mentioned there that our attendees may not be so familiar with. One of the things that I think is pretty standard, particularly in universities, my experience is they feel like they have a good grasp on what needs to be done. And, you know, they've been doing this for a couple hundred years. They write a scope, they put it out to bid, they get stuff back. And if I hear you right, and I know a little bit of background about some of these projects, the ESCOs actually came up with new ideas for you. Is that right?
Yes, it was. I mean, we picked the ESCO on their innovation of projects. So yes, one of the things we did in the state contract was, and we tried to promote a third party doing M&V, that the savings was not guaranteed unless you hired an M&V contractor. So if they decided to do a project and they didn't have concurrence from the M&V contractor, it was what it was. If they didn't save the money, in one of the universities that was within the state of Rhode Island said, you know, we have an engineering school, we don't need an M&V contractor. And I have to tell you, it was an absolute disaster.
Well, you can go to school and learn a lot of things, but rarely do they teach the concept of measurement and verification for a performance contract.
Well, there's one other piece. There's one other piece to that. When you're in discourse with a contractor, if you're both the M&V component yourself and the owner yourself, you're 100% in discourse. Where we used that M&V contractor when we had issues. One of the projects we had was within the state of Rhode Island. It was a health lab, and it was not commissioned well. And we used the M&V contractor to be the hammer to come in and say, hey, look, guys, you're never going to meet your savings. You never commissioned it right. And, you know, I was not the bad guy. The M&V contractor was the bad guy.
Yeah, so those are just amazing snippets from those projects. We just can't thank you enough for sharing them. When I think back on some of the things that you've shared already, did purchasing ever come around? Did the naysayers ever begin to recognize the value of the projects that you were fulfilling?
Well, actually, the value, it was kind of funny. It was only after I left that I find the value, that I had one of the project managers from the Governor's Office of Energy Resource call me and say, Jay, my friend, there's never been a project like what you did at Pastori. For all the people who said that, you know, for all the Monday morning quarterbacks that said you should have done this or you should have done that, nothing's ever saved that kind of money. Again, I think we started somewhere around a $25 million fuel bill. When we finished the $54 million of investment, and we had some closure of buildings, but when we finished the $54 million of investment, we were at $7.9 million of operating cost.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a significant change. And sadly, but finally somebody did recognize the value of what you did, right?
I was long gone. He called me later to say, you know, I'm the one now doing the energy bills, not you. And, you know, I just couldn't believe the downward trend in energy bills. And I thought that it was a mistake or someone was cooking the books. But, you know, Aramark was actually doing the energy trending before I started. So basically, I wasn't the person who started that. I was in the middle, and then someone was doing it after I left. In the naysayers, it's kind of funny because, again, if you go back to an open book pricing and you pick the most expensive, best value product of energy performance contract, no one can believe that it's not low bid. So they don't understand that it's that you picked it from an RFP and you picked it on the project. So yes, I had quite a few naysayers saying, you know, you picked XYZ contractor, you picked this material that was the most expensive piping system. You didn't put that out to bid, you're going to go to jail, right? And you know, I mean, purchasing gave a PO, purchasing was on board with every construction work order. Every construction work order detailed the labor and the equipment and the pipe run from beginning to end. So it was really that their ignorance of how the process went along as to why they were naysayers. One other thing I want to actually add to this is that one of the things that we did with steam piping was, I don't know how many miles of pipe we ran, but the first phase we did was 1.2 million. We had it fully engineered. And as soon as we hit the first obstacle, we had to fully engineer it again. And then we hit a second obstacle and we had to fully engineer it again. When we went to the next phase, which was, I don't know, like $14 million, we decided to do a design build. So we had a 95% design and we gave them a 5% contingency, construction contingency for unforeseen conditions. We brought that in on time and on budget.
Yeah, that's just amazing to hear. And I must tell you, Jay, part of the fun is hearing you from those life experiences, sharing with folks that, this may be new to. And so just in the minorest of moments, you used a phrase called open book that many people may not be familiar with, but a real key to value in these projects is the sort of transparency that you've lived with, right?
Yes.
Having the ability.
You know what you're buying because the contractor shows you all the invoices for material, invoices for contractors, scope. If you're over budget, the two of you can sit down and try to back the scope out, or value engineer or value manage back into what your price range, or trade for something else.
Yeah, I've always been amazed at the success of these projects when money was transparent, because let's face it, no matter whether you're buying or you're selling, money is the source of many, many arguments. And to open the books like that and say, hey, let's go find all the energy efficiency we can find, deploy it, and be transparent on the dollars and cents, really make these projects go well.
The project manager said it's because we were all part Irish that we never had any discourse.
Well, I just want to back up a couple dozen squares. One of the things that you said was, you had somebody call you after you'd actually left and talked about the success of the project, and they were seeing that success based on the cost of utility. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, it's odd, in the nearly 3 decades that I've been engaged in this industry, a lot of people talk about these projects from the measures. Well, we did get that wood chip boiler, and, we got the steam pipe done, and, there was so much work that got accomplished, and folks lose sight of the fact that there are real energy savings here. Again, you jump over very quickly the need for measurement and verification, the science of proving that the savings have been achieved, but moving that to a third party for you became a big success.
Yes.
So that they could illustrate it. There was no question about who was right, who was wrong. It was part of that engineering application of science.
It was they also validated each of our projects. One of the things that we did, we were going into a hospital, and by the time the project started, from when the investment grade audit was done, technology had changed. So basically, we took the investment grade audit, we combined, I say we threw it out the window. We combined 4 of the projects into one. One was VAV, one was some reheat, one was removing the pneumatic controls. We put it all into one project, combining 4 savings, combine the savings, combine the dollars. We ended up doing it a little bit cheaper than the 4 standalone projects. But if we went back to the investment grade audit, we would not have had current technology, right? We took the methodology of the investment grade audit and used that to go forward. But it was probably 2 years later by the time we went to do the work, and we decided, there's better technology. Let's just use the better technology and make it a better project. And we were able to do that.
Wow. Another great concept, having flexibility instead of abiding by the specifications, if you will, to fulfill the project, right?
Well, the specifications we still used, as a Johnson control system, we still used all the components of the specification. We just used them differently.
So for goods and services, you specified, but in a big picture, you had a negotiated procurement.
Yes.
Yeah. And in the multiple roles that you've had, Jay, and I think back from some of the other conversation we had, I know folks in your position always have to provide some form of reporting of the success of the projects at various stages, right?
Yes.
So what did that look like? How'd you go about gathering the information to do that?
So what we did was we did a monthly report of construction, and that monthly report broke each of the projects, construction work orders into components, and it showed where we were in the construction along with photos, and it also would project what the savings were through construction. One of the things when I was at Rhode Island College, one of the things we did a little differently was the company that came in proposed to do half the lighting for $2.5 million, changing it over to LED. And we had a lot of very expensive ornamental lights. So they didn't want to touch that because the ornamental lights had a 126-year payback. So what we did was we actually went back to National Grid, who was our utility, and used an expediter. And we did all of the lights for $3.2 million. But one of the things that we did was, because it was in the investment grade audit, we assigned all the savings to the energy performance contractor. We got 0% for 5 years on the money. So we did not use money from the project. We used added resources, increased the project by another $3.2 million. But again, assigning them the savings so that they had the cash, they had that money in the cash flow for them to do more work.
And you know, Jay, for all our listeners, there's no better definition of leveraging funds than the one you just provided, whether it's grants or incentives, wherever it comes from. Joining those funds into the project along with the savings helps make better projects, right?
Yeah, well, we were able to do I think there were 110 ornamental lights that, as I said, had a 126-year payback. We were able to parse them out into each of the projects to get them to just under 5 years. I mean, some of the projects might have had 2 lights, some of them might have had 5, one of them might have had 10, but we were able to do all of the ornamental lights, change them over to LED by using exactly that methodology.
Wow. So looking back, and I know there've been a number of projects in your history, and it's one of the reasons why we're so delighted to have you with us. What are the kind of things that you've learned? One thing I learned loud and clear from you, and I actually had a whole host of other reasons, is shared savings may not be the best idea.
No.
But folks still talk about, well, can I do shared savings? Well, you can, but there's a variety of reasons why people don't, right?
I would concur with that.
What else would you say that you've learned along the way that you could help folks think about?
I think that the thing that I learned the most and the most value that I got out of it was to build a partnership. Build a partnership with your contractor, build a partnership with your performance company, you know, whoever it is, build a partnership with even your legal team, because every construction work order, if you're in government or in university setting, needs to be signed off on by a legal team. So showing the legal team that you're doing a real project and it's got real savings, and what they're signing off on, you know, is legally sound. You know, the first project we did was delayed 2 years. When I talked about having the delay in time, was really due to legal. So again, having the legal team trust you and you trust them, along with again, having a trusted partnership of all the players involved is what I think is one of the largest things that I learned. I want to bring one other point about things that we learned. When we first started the project, of course, we've got, you know, all the guys, all the supervisors from the trades. So when you start your kickoff meeting, they're all sitting in the back, right? And they're all on the back wall, and they're just kind of holding a paper, and they don't want to say anything because they feel like they're going to be out of place. Well, about 2 months into the project, I was sitting in the back. They were sitting at the table. They were going through all the construction roadblocks that they could see. And you know what? I was a player coach. They were the teammates. They were the guys running the projects. And I was never so proud as to watch them go from the back of the room to the table and watch their confidence grow as they ran these projects. And I was always there to help guide, or to, you know, if they had questions, to help them through the questions. But, you know, to kind of sit back and watch them run the projects was probably one of the proudest points that I had in the whole process.
Yeah, it's a great thing when people actually catch on to what's happening and the success and the value of performance contracting. And working as a team in unison, a partnership, using your word, which is a really good one, trying to achieve together instead of having this us and them contest that usually results from capital construction, right?
That's exactly what we got rid of, was the us versus them, or us versus you. And again, the maintenance guys, they got to maintain it. So having them sit at the table and talk about, where they wanted a drip riser, or where they wanted a valve, or where they wanted a bypass. It was short money, but you know what? They had to manage and operate it. And I wanted to give something that they could manage and they could be proud of. One of the things that we did, the vendor wanted to put valve stations in the ground, in manholes. I wanted to bring them all out of the ground, because I don't know how you fix a valve that's leaking if it's leaking in the ground. You got to shut everything down. But I took a lot of the concepts, things that the guys wanted, and built it into the project.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, building those teams so that it's not a champion and an ESCO, if you will, but the whole internal organization benefits when they're engaged. I learned a long time ago the phrase of, reaching out to the maintenance folks, and because they know where the bones are buried. And while that might be a silly way to say it, they know where there are problems that need to be attended to that might not even show up in the greatest of investment grade audit, right?
They know where the bones are buried, and they know why they're buried there.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And they may also know where there's a little baling wire and duct tape that they didn't really want to talk about, just because they never really got the funds that they needed to do the job, right?
Yes.
Yeah, having them on board, you're absolutely right. They're going to inherit these devices and systems and facilities back. And it's really important that they have input and not believe that they're going to lose total control of the decision-making process. And one of the things that we talked about earlier was the concern about bringing on potentially subcontractors that may had not been, how should we say this, good providers in the past. I believe you shared with us that you knew that needed to be managed. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I used the joke ham, egg in his truck, but we did not bring ham, egg in his truck because, well, again, the energy performance contractors that we had, ham, egg in his truck did not meet their standard of work. One of them was a Fortune 50 company, and they just could not meet the terms and conditions or the insurance requirements or the financial capacity to even do the work.
And I bring that up and look for your concurrence because of how important it is for universities, state and local governments to recognize the power of managing a project like this that really delivers highest value. It's far more important than just it being energy savings. It's a control shift. It's a management shift. It's a partnership without the disputes that we know exist when the conduit's trying to go through the ductwork, right?
And some of it was the opposite. Some of it was that we were able to bring in some smaller companies that had a niche skill set, that they were able to fix things, that they knew what was wrong. They were able to fix it. They knew what was wrong. They've been trying to fix it, but never given the time or the correct resources to fix it. And again, we were able to use some of those and do it right.
Awesome. Awesome to hear. So I want to take you back again for a moment and think about another piece of these projects, because it is fantastic what you can get done and how well they go once you have a little bit of experience and expertise. If you go back to that first project, and I think you've been removed from it for a while now, mm-hmm. If you needed to find those construction meeting notes where everybody sat around the table and agreed that A should be B and it should be done this way, gosh, how would you go about finding that information today?
I might have some of it on a stick of stuff that I saved, but that was 3 positions ago, 3 jobs ago. I don't think anybody that is directly responsible today could do it without picking up the phone and calling me and saying, "Hey Jay, do you remember when we were talking about, whatever?" Do you happen to have the information or the project meetings from when that was? Because most of it I saved, you know, when I left, I put a 90-page brief together when I left, and a lot of the brief was supported by information that I saved, and it's on a stick. But they don't, I don't necessarily, and I gave the stick, I made copies of the stick and gave it to people, but I don't think anyone realized or managed or organized the stick in a way that they can go back. I can look at it because I built it. They're going to look at it and be lost. I don't think anyone could do that today. I think they would be at a loss.
And sadly, it's a story that's repeated all across the nation. People change. You know, sometimes it's the IT department decides they want space. And we're all familiar with the fact that in the 13th month of a capital project, folks believe that you don't need any of that data. Well, here, you know, you may need it for 10, 15, 20 years, and it just gets lost.
I got a call last week from exactly this at my previous position, asking why they did things a certain way. And I was able to go back, pull the documents and send it. But again, they weren't able to do it. It's really too bad because if I get hit by a bus, they wouldn't be able to find it at all.
Well, and if somebody who was in your position was not notorious for trying to keep track of it, you wouldn't have it available those many years back, right?
No.
And so for the ESCOs that always join us on this, and I think this is a really important point, if the owner doesn't have it, typically they pick up the phone and they call the energy services company. And, you know, they ask them for data that's 6, 10 years old. Wow. Let's just all agree it's hard if you haven't had a planned way to keep track of this information. And even universities or companies that put forward that they have methodologies for this, websites, storage areas, seen a lot of it, but over the course of time, it seems to drift away. Having the ability to find that information just can't be emphasized enough. So if I think back for that, and it's not on that stick, well, we're just out of luck, right?
SOL, actually, I wanted to do a pipe comparison of Ravenco Permapipe and Rickwell that I know we did 15 years ago. I can see the document in my mind, and I could not find it on the stick. It would have been kept if we had that product.
It's just all great information. And, you know, the interesting thing is there's a couple of pieces here that I want to segue for our listeners. You know, it's great to have an exchange with you, and we can't thank you enough for sharing your thoughts and life experiences. But many of the things, process, as well as how to find this information, how to report this information, well, it's been hard. And frankly, all over the nation, people have tried to create their own, sometimes spreadsheets, sometimes reports, sometimes PowerPoint presentations. People are all over the map. But thanks to the United States Department of Energy's investment and the skill of our friends at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, a solution was created for this, to gather this invaluable data and files in a free, secure, web-based repository. And so what I'd like to do is maybe shift gears. And Liz, if you're ready, we could talk a little bit more about eProject Express. For one other thing, we've shared that a little bit with you, Jay, knowing that we didn't have eProject Express back then, and from what you've seen, any comments, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, actually, I was almost going to interrupt you to say, you know, one of the biggest values that I see is that you're going to have apples to apples all the time. When I left and how I parsed up savings in, you know, gas, oil, electricity, I always kept things in BTUs. Well, if somebody doesn't want to use BTUs, they just want to use gallons, then how do you combine gas and oil? I guess you say gallons of oil and CCF of gas. But if you have interruptible fuel, you're not looking at combining them. So you're not looking at apples with other apples. So I think that this is a way to have the methodology the same going forward today as in 5 years, 10 years. you know, at the end of your bond cycle, let's say it's 15 years, if there's 10 people that are, you know, doing this collation for 15 years, when you get to the end, it's going to be that apple to apple comparison. And I think that that's got a huge value. Somebody's
That
not
small piece of standardization is huge.
Yeah,
I,
it really
I might mention for you, the federal product actually leans on the concept of reporting BTUs. What we heard from state and local people is, we don't know how to look on a utility bill and find BTUs. So show us in our, you know, in the organic units, and we know we can convert that later. So it's interesting that we were successful in being able to present both. You can have the best of both worlds here, which is a big deal as well.
Yes.
So thanks for that, Jay. I'll just mention, while Liz, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask you to share yours. One of the other things that I think is really important is that when people produce an investment grade audit, you know, we used to laugh and say how thick they were in inches, but no matter how you think of them, there's a tremendous amount of information. And inevitably, somebody says, hey, can I have an executive summary? I mean, what are the measures? Who are the people? What are you shooting for? What does this thing look like? And I'm just delighted to share with you that eProject Express also sort of fulfills that for you, a standardized version of an executive summary about a project, not only in the beginning, but in the end after results have been achieved. So Liz, if you would.
Sure, thanks Dale, and thanks Jay. So we did give Jay a little preview of eProject Express, and so that's what Jay was talking about, is this sort of level of standardization across projects, across years. You know, when you design your process and use eProject Express, for example, to house your project data and your documents, it does create that standardization, and also just preserves those kinds of documents that are hard to find years down the road. So I think Jay got a good sense of what it could do. Did you have any other thoughts, Jay, before I jump into the demo of EPX?
No, just thank you for the opportunity for me to present some of what I've done over my career.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been really great hearing your stories. I hope it's been useful for folks. And just as a reminder, you feel free to ask questions. Jay will be here till, you know, the end of the hour, and so hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A. But I just want to do a very quick visual demo for folks that might not be familiar with eProject Express. So I'm going to share my screen, and so it's an online system. It's got a relational database. It's got document storage where you can keep your project information. So you collect, store, access your information, much of which you'll need, you know, well into the performance period, right? So let's see. So this is the landing page. And for anyone who might be a little familiar with eProject Builder and eProject Express and eProject Builder go into the same database, but eProject Builder was built for the federal government, and it has a very extensive set of data fields that you can collect. You upload via a Excel-based template, and you can report on, etc. And we did a pretty extensive outreach to state and local practitioners, and they really liked it, but they wanted a streamlined set of fields. They didn't need that extensive a set of fields. So we created a streamlined version called eProject Express. And it's free for all users. We've got commercial users. We've got, you know, state, local, university, K through 12, federal, private, commercial. It's all kinds of projects. And also different contract types. It can be energy savings performance contract, direct funded, utility energy service contracts, which is mostly federal, but I think the state of California is using, where they team up with their utility for retrofit. So I guess, you know, the idea here is that when you preserve this stuff, let's say there's a change in your staffing or administration, it's going to be here in perpetuity. I mean, DOE is committed to supporting this for the many, many years of these contract terms. So it's basically like your electronic filing cabinet and reporting system for your projects. This is not a full training. This is just a quick demo. If you want, you can go to eprojectbuilder.lbl.gov, and we'll show you that link at the end. I'm using a different website for my demo, but if you go to the help page, if you're on eProject Builder, there are training resources if you're for the eProject Builder version and the eProject Express version, and you can log into that anytime. Now I'm logged into an account as a customer. These are all just test projects on our test site. So I'm going to click this portfolio button here near the upper left, and you can see a bunch of test projects here. We did talk a lot about the documents, the ability to store documents, etc. So I want to show you that first. So when we look at our portfolio of projects here, it's got a list, it's got just some overview information about each, so you can identify your projects in your list of projects. I'll go to my test EPX project. So now when I click the project name, we go to each project has its own dashboard. It's got a little summary of what's going on here, some next steps that you can do. And I'm going to show you the documents section. So over here on the left side in the black bar here on the left, there's some links, and we'll click the project documents link here. So here's the project documents section. And this is the place where those all important documents can be uploaded, stored, accessed for the life of the contract. And what's special about eProject Express and different from eProject Builder is we have created a suggested file checklist here. So this little blue link here, file checklist, if I click it, it's going to open up. And for right now, it provides a suggested list of the kinds of documents that you want to upload to this project document area. You know, agreement approval minutes, final completion, M&V plan, post-construction pictures, pre-construction pictures. So again, this is a suggested list. We don't have this organized by category or anything like this, but when you do upload a document, you get a chance to enter some notes. So simply click the button, upload a file. You can grab a file. Let's say you want the full team contact list. So I'll just grab that. It's an Excel file, upload it, and it gives me a place to write some notes. Team list as of October 2022. And voila, it's there. And I'm logged in as the customer. This is a partnership kind of a setup. So there are two parties that have access to each project, the customer side or the project initiator, and the ESCO side or the project builder. I just uploaded this. I'm the only one who can delete it. Now the ESCO can go in and see it, download it. They can't delete it. Dale, is there anything else you want to say about documents before I move on to the next thing?
You know, Liz, I just ask you to open the checklist again and draw people's attention to the fact that almost everybody knows how important it is to keep the contracts. You know, somewhere they're going to find a way to file that. But if you're really trying to find the load study, the inventory of all the consuming devices that were in place at the beginning of the investment grade audit, wow, you may not ever be able to find that. And that may be the point of some dispute, that somebody's making up the savings numbers. Hey, look, I can show you pre-construction pictures, a load study inventory, all the utility bills. I mean, this is literally a place where you can house all the things that eliminate disputes. And frankly, having spent a few years as an ESCO, I don't have to worry about actually trying to find this information and digging it up and trying to provide it to a customer who's looking for it. I can just say, hey, in our partnership, we put it all out there. It's in EPX. So really important stuff out there, the minutes, the calendars, all of it. Very, very important part of making sure your ESPC project is a good one. for the
You know, the other thing to add to that is when you've got the list of people working, like, you know, you'll think, oh, you know, we had this engineer, you know, whatever, what XYZ company. I remember his first name was Steve. You know, what company, what was he? I mean, you can go back 15 years ago and find his name and then look him up on LinkedIn if you wanted to.
Right. Find him years later. Good point. Great. Okay, so that is the document section. And in fact, Berkeley National Lab does a lot of research on the ESPC world and the ESCO industry. And the last time we did an ESCO market study, we asked ESCOs about challenges. And one of the challenges that came out pretty loud and clear was challenges finding documentation. They'll have a customer that, you know, needs to justify the payments, you know, 4 or 5 years into a contract. And the ESCOs reported that it took anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks for them to find the documents that they needed to get to their customers. So if you use this document section, you know, religiously and get the stuff in there, it will, you know, it's going to be here. So I think and ESCOs did say this is probably one of the most useful parts of eProject Builder or eProject Express that'll save them a lot of time. I'm going to just also, I don't want to spend too much more time, but I did want to show you a couple of the reports. There's a lot of different reports you can get once your project data is in EPB. Again, this is not a training. You can look at training videos on the help page. So I'm not going into how you get the data in here, but basically you enter it in an Excel file and upload it to get it into the database. We do have a project summary report, this one here. So I'll click that. And basically it is a nice compact downloadable, downloads as a PDF, basically list of the information that's in your project. And for eProject Express, it's very streamlined. So it's a one-pager, pretty extensive still. You know, it's got project location information, contact information, the finance terms such as the interest rate, the performance period, what the electricity, natural gas, water utilities are, is there solar PV? There are also customized user-defined data fields. So let's say you want to note your annual CO2 reduction, your estimated reduction. There's also a checklist for project measures. So you can check which kinds of project measure categories do we have in this project. Obviously, the more detailed information about the ECMs will be in that documentation that you'll upload, the contract, etc. But this is a great summary. And if there are non-facility measures lists, such as, you know, highway lighting, athletic field lighting, you can show that. There are, of course, the number of buildings. There is the annual consumption, the baseline pre-project consumption, if you will, and then the project capitalization. You know, what's the implementation price? What's the amount financed? What's the total of the contract payments? What's the start date of the performance period? And then in the lower right corner, what are those projected results? Your annual estimated energy savings, your annual estimated cost savings, your total cost savings, your annual guaranteed, and your total guaranteed cost savings. This is just a dummy project, so it has some nonsense numbers in there, but it's great. It's downloadable, very quick to output that. If you're an ESCO, if you're a customer, you need to report to someone, you're an ESCO, you want to just hand this to your customer. You can even use this as you're developing a project. A lot of times people will enter information when you're kind of in the final IGA stage, and maybe you want to print this out for your customer and have it be part of the documents that you submit.
Liz, I just want to interject that you went over the fact that those were estimated savings. Rightfully so. This is project information, not measurement and verification.
Right.
In other reports, you'd see verified savings. Just to jump ahead and sort of answer that question, because everybody needs a summary of what you plan to, perhaps more importantly, actually what you achieved.
Right, good segue, because next we're going to go to this M&V, which stands for measurement and verification. So that's, as you said, the scientific approach to, you know, measuring, are we achieving those guaranteed savings? So There's a little separate module, if you will, here where the MNV, the annual MNV data is uploaded in its own template. And as it gets uploaded each year, the ESCO will upload the data, the customer reviews it and approves it. So right here we have this sample project. We've got our, for, I guess, year 0, which is the, the installation period, the construction period, and sometimes organizations will count savings that accrue during the performance period. So you can have an M&V report, or you can have your post-installation verification report is what you upload for year 0. Years 1, 2, and 3. For each year, we can export very quickly. We can export a single year summary M&V report. And it's got, it's got a very, again, it's a 1-page, very quick to read. Obviously, it's not everything that's going to be in your M&V report, but it's a nice high-level summary for to share with, management or folks on your team that don't need to know all the details. Let me make that a little bigger here. Hopefully, you can see that. Let me get that on my screen. Let me make it 200%.
So even as Jay mentioned, we were careful to make sure that the contact information was always listed in these reports so you could find out who the M&V specialist was for this term.
Exactly. So we've got key dates, project information. Dates are important. And what we've got here that's really cool is when the ESCO inputs this information into the M&V template, and then you get this output of the actual verified savings. If it's the post-installation verification report, that would be the expected savings, right? But if it's actually year 1, those are your verified savings. But we have this next year M&V report due date, and what's cool is the eProject Builder and eProject Express system will email the ESCO and the customer 2 months before the M&V report's due, and then again 2 weeks before it's due. So automated email reminders based on the date that's put in here. Of course, the verified savings. We also have a new section, verified greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So that can be entered as well. And we'll soon have a new instruction coming out there's a new tool from the Environmental Protection Agency called ESIST that can be used to get your factors for your GHG emissions, and we have a way to use it for individual projects. So we'll provide some instruction on that. You can also enter your verified job impacts and, of course, what your verified savings are. So that's the annual M&V report. And then we also have a very one-button cumulative M&V report that compiles everything that's in here for our however many years that we've done. And I think I already downloaded one, but let me go ahead and get that. Cumulative M&V report. So this is again, a one-pager, very high level, but pretty useful, because it kind of tells you where you're at in your performance period. It lists your estimated annual cost savings, your guaranteed annual cost savings. Were there any verified cost savings during the implementation period, if you are an organization that counts those, and then what your verified savings are for each year and what the variance is. And also, this is pretty important, the status here over in the far right. You can at a glance see, like, okay, we've got years 1 and 3 have been entered and approved, but oh, looks like year 2, customer forgot to go in and review and approve it. So you can just pull up this report and see what shape your M&V is. If you were in year 7 of your performance period and you were missing all these years, you got a little catching up to do. So just a very quick, easy report that gives you a lot of good information. We also have a custom reporting feature. I won't be able to go into it right now in the time we have. It's the analysis and reporting, but there is a report library. There are some standardized reports that you can choose from. You can also save reports and build a report, save it for you to, report again and again over time. And we have a training video on this.
So Liz,
yes.
is that to say that the project participants, the owner and the ESCO, would have access to a report. And if somebody called them from some supervising authority and said, hey, I need to know where we stand on this project and I need it for the meeting tomorrow night, they could simply go press a few buttons and they'd have the report of all the new updated information.
That's correct. Yep. And so if you're using eProject Express, I do recommend taking looking at the training video, but we can also offer technical assistance. If you want to build a certain kind of report that you're going to use over and over again, and it's a pretty extensive reporting feature. So, and it's got properties kind of like Excel pivot tables a little bit. So we're happy to help you build your report that you use again and again. And then if you've got more projects that have been entered or updated information, just output that report to get the latest information. And you can also export data. So up here in the upper left, there's a data export. So you can export an Excel file with the data for all your projects and use that data as well as you wish. I will stop because we're very close to the end of time, and I don't know if any folks have any questions. So hopefully that gave you a very quick overview. We do have a 1-hour on-demand webinar with more information and shorter training videos, and we are available for technical support. Maybe you could put up that final slide there, Dale, with the technical support email address, epb-support@lbl.gov. I didn't put the technical support email there. Anyway, if you go to the help page, you will find our technical support link, which is epb-support.lbl.gov. And just to point out a couple of additional resources that you all should know about, there is the Performance Contracting National Resource Center at DOE. There are more and more resources are being added to that. So they really want to support the MUSH market. That's the municipalities, state, universities, colleges, educational hospital. And that's what that resource center is for. And then I guess, Dale, you probably know a little bit more about GESPCU because that's an Energy Services Coalition initiative.
It is a product funded by DOE that we spent a significant amount of time bringing together a lot of historic information, really the university of all things energy savings performance contracting. So in little 12 to 15-minute podcasts, some great information. If you're thinking about entering into a performance contract or you want to help an end user learn more about it before you get there, this is a great pathway to follow. So we certainly want to offer that to you. And I would just say, I think Jay needed to go along, but we certainly want to thank him for his time and expertise in sharing his history. And we want to thank all of you for spending a little bit of time with us today. We hope you found this instrumentally helpful in how you think about performance contracting and how we think about actually reporting results. I'm a long-standing believer that we've advertised the signing of paper when a contract is initiated, and we've missed the opportunity to share the incredible results in efficiency, in jobs created, greenhouse gases, all of it. So thank you for joining EPX, an extraordinarily powerful tool for every project.
Take care.
Bye now.